All right, so if you're a Toyota owner, there's a pretty good chance you've seen that dreaded check engine light. And when you plug in a code reader and it spits out P0171, well, that can sound pretty intimidating, right? But today, we're going to completely demystify this code. We're going to give you a clear roadmap to figuring out exactly what your car is trying to tell you. Oh yeah, we've all been there. That little orange light starts glowing and your mind just jumps to the worst case scenario. But you gotta remember, that light, it's just a message. And our job today is to translate that message, specifically code P0171 into plain English, so you know exactly where to even begin looking. So what are we actually talking about here? The code P0171 gives us our first major clue right in its own description: system to lean. Let's break down what that actually means for your engine. Okay, so at its core, P0171 means your engine's computer, the brain of the operation, often called the ECM, is seeing an imbalance. See, it's always trying to maintain this perfect, delicate ratio of air and fuel for combustion. But right now, it's seeing way too much air, or not nearly enough fuel. And that's a problem, because a lean mixture burns hotter, which can ramp up emissions and over time could even damage parts of your engine. And that bank 1 part, that simply refers to the side of the engine that has the number 1 cylinder. See, just like that, we've already narrowed our search. This really simplifies the whole problem, doesn't it? The P0171 code almost always boils down to one of two things. Either you've got unmetered air, air that's sneaking into the engine after it's been measured, or your fuel system just isn't delivering the gasoline the engine is asking for. We're going to investigate both of these possibilities. You know, the code isn't the only clue your car is giving you. You might actually feel the problem when you're driving. Is your car idling kind of rough? Does it hesitate when you step on the gas? Maybe you're hearing a little pinging sound? Or are you suddenly getting way worse gas mileage? These are all classic symptoms that go hand in hand with a P0171 code. All right, let's start our investigation with the most common culprit of them all: air. Specifically, we're going to go on a hunt for that unmetered air that's getting into the engine and throwing off that crucial air-fuel ratio. So where in the world could this extra air be coming from? Well, the most frequent cause is what's called a vacuum leak. Just think of it like a tiny invisible straw letting extra air into the engine where it shouldn't be. This could be a simple cracked rubber hose, a faulty valve like the PCV valve, or even a leaking gasket. A mechanic will often start their search right here, sometimes using a special smoke machine to find exactly where that pesky leak is hiding. Now, if it's not a vacuum leak, the next logical place to look is the gatekeeper of the whole air intake system, the mass airflow sensor, or MAF sensor. Its entire job is to measure the amount of air coming into the engine and report that number to the computer. So if that reading is off, the computer is going to calculate the wrong amount of fuel to inject. It's a chain reaction. And this is great because this illustrates a really simple first step that a lot of people can actually do themselves. Oftentimes, the math sensor isn't actually broken, it's just dirty. You can usually find it right after the air filter, and cleaning it is a pretty straightforward job. Now, the key here, and this is super important, is to be absolutely sure you use a cleaner that is specifically designed for MAF sensors. Other chemicals can totally damage the delicate little parts inside. A quick, careful clean can sometimes solve the entire problem. It's wild. Okay, so what if we've investigated the whole airflow side of things and everything seems okay? Well, then the problem must be on the other side of the equation: fuel. So the next big question we have to ask is the engine simply not getting the gasoline it's asking for? Is it basically starving? Yeah, there are several components that are responsible for getting fuel from your gas tank all the way to the engine. A clogged fuel filter can restrict the flow, a weak fuel pump might not be able to build up enough pressure, a bad regulator can mess with that pressure, or the injectors themselves could be clogged up and not spraying enough fuel into the cylinder. Now, the crucial thing here is that you don't have to check every single one of those parts one by one. A pro will often start with a simple fuel pressure test. Why? Because if the pressure reading at the engine is correct, you can generally rule out both the fuel pump and the fuel filter in one single step. That saves a ton of diagnostic time. All right, now we have to talk about the single biggest misconception with this P0171 code. So many people see the code, and they immediately want to blame the sensor that reported it in the first place. But is the sensor really the problem? This quote from our source material just hits the nail on the head. The oxygen sensor, or the O2 sensor, is the part that detects the lean mixture and tells the computer, hey, trigger the check engine light. It's basically the messenger, and you should never shoot the messenger. This is the key question you have to ask yourself. Is the O2 sensor broken and sending bad information, or is it working perfectly and it's just accurately reporting a real problem that's happening somewhere else in the system? More often than not, it's the second one. Look, to be clear, O2 sensors can fail, but its main job is to be a reporter. It just reads the gases in the exhaust and tells the computer what the air-fuel ratio looks like. So if you replace it without first diagnosing the root cause, like that vacuum leak or that fuel pump issue we talked about, you're just going to end up with the same code coming right back on. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground. We've looked at the air side, the fuel side, and the sensors. So now let's put it all together into a clear, step-by-step diagnostic roadmap.
This slide illustrates the most logical way to attack this problem. Think of it like a funnel. You start at the top with the most common and easiest things to check first. Step 1, inspect for vacuum leaks. Easy enough. Step 2, clean and test that mass sensor. If the problem is still there, you move down the funnel to the more involved stuff, like checking the fuel pressure. And only after you've done all that do you even start to consider the O2 sensor itself. By following this order, you avoid wasting time and money on parts you probably don't even need. And see the injectors way down there at the bottom? That's because they are usually the least likely culprit.
So the next time that check engine light comes on, try not to see it as just a problem. See it as a message. It's the starting point for an investigation. By understanding what the code means and then following a logical path, you can start to understand what your car is really trying to tell you.